People look at the tablecloths I embroider and tell me how vibrant the flowers are. They see beauty, but I see blood. They don't know that every deep red rose is a slap that made me dizzy. Every orange carnation is a punch that swelled my eyes. And every bright yellow sunflower marks the day my husband kicked my ribs until they snapped. My name is Martha. I am 73 years old, and I didn't just kill my husband with 0.3 ounces of rat poison mixed into his whiskey. I spent 13 solid years, stitch by stitch, thread by thread, embroidering the evidence of his cruelty right under his nose. He thought I was just a submissive wife making decorations. He didn't know I was sewing his death sentence. Do you think I'm a cold-blooded killer, or a mother pushed to the brink, watching her disabled son being tormented? Before you sentence me, listen to the story of the Martha Code, the secret weapon that helped me transform my pain into freedom. But before I start turning back the pages of the past, I really want to know where in the world you are listening from, so please leave a comment below. It was 11:47 p.m. on the 14th of March 2006. I know the exact time because I spent my whole life counting everything. Every embroidery stitch, every stair-step, every minute between him arriving drunk and starting to beat me. And that night I counted even the seconds while I opened the green envelope of poison, pouring it inside the brown 24-ounce bottle, picking up the old wooden spoon I used to stir stew and turning 43 times in total, until the white powder disappeared completely into the amber liquid that smelled like cheap whiskey and destruction. From the living room came his snoring, that disgusting noise of a drunk man who had just broken my son Caleb's wheelchair with a kick, who had dragged my boy by his hair across the floor of the whole house, who had screamed that a cripple is good for nothing and that I had made a useless son. As I stood in the dim light of the kitchen, pouring the white powder into the amber liquid, my hands didn't shake, not once. I picked up the wooden spoon, the same spoon I used to feed my son, and I stirred 43 times, round and round. With every turn of the spoon, I felt 30 years of fear dissolving along with the poison. I wasn't just mixing a drink, I was mixing my freedom. I looked at the bottle and didn't see murder. I saw justice. I saw peace for Caleb. I saw a quiet house. I whispered to the air, "Forgive me, Lord, but this is the only way to save the life you gave me." To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand where I come from. I wasn't born a killer. I was born into poverty on the 7th of April 1952, in a 3-room shack on Oak Street in Muncie, Indiana. It was a place where I learned from a very young age that a stitch made is a stitch counted, and that numbers are the only proof a poor woman has. I was born and raised in Muncie, Indiana, a factory town of hard-working people who wake up early and go to bed late. And today I live in a small rented house right here in my hometown, paying $650 in rent a month, sharing the 3 rooms with my son Caleb, who is 41 years old, and hasn't walked since he was 8 because of what I'm going to tell here. I spent 12 years of my life locked up in the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis, from 2006 to 2018. I was originally sentenced to 20 years for first-degree murder, which was later reduced to 14 years due to mitigating factors applied by the judge. In the end, I served only 12 years for good behavior, because I killed my husband Wayne with rat poison dissolved in bourbon, after enduring 30 years of beatings, after seeing him transform my son into a paraplegic by throwing the boy from a deck 14 feet high, when the poor thing was only 8 years old, after 14 years of watching my Caleb be humiliated, cursed at, and dragged across the floor, after seeing his wheelchair broken twice by that bastard whom the justice system never arrested, but that I, with my seamstress hands, finally stopped. Tell me here in the comments your name and where you are listening to me from. This story of this old woman who went to prison for killing someone who needed to die. Because I want to know, are there people out there who think I did wrong? Is there anyone who thinks I should have waited another 30 years getting beaten, another 20 years seeing my crippled son being stepped on? But how many years until he killed me for good? Or killed Caleb? Comment below where you are watching this from. Tell me your city, your state. Tell me if you understand me, or if you are one of those who thinks a woman has to put up with a man until she dies. Because after you hear everything I'm going to tell here, every detail of the 30 years of hell I lived in that house, every beating I took, every bone he broke, every humiliation my son went through, You will understand why those 0.3 ounces of a sure shot dissolved in 24 ounces of corn whiskey were not a crime. They were liberation. I worked 38 years as an industrial seamstress at the Hoosier Textile Mill, right here in Muncie. I started there in 1968, freshly turned 16. I left in 2006 at 54, fired 3 days after being arrested for killing Wayne, because the company doesn't want an employee who is facing a homicide charge. It doesn't matter if the woman was exemplary for 38 years straight, without missing a day, without being late once, without having a piece rejected for a defect. My wage when I left was $847 a month, after almost 4 decades working like a convict, because the factory paid peanuts. But it was what we had, and I sewed shirt cuffs, those cuffs people use on dress shirts. I had to sew 2,400 pieces a day to hit the quota. It was 8 hours threading, passing fabric through the machine, cutting leftovers, checking if the button was firm. And in all that, I developed an eye that detected a defect in a fraction of a second. I looked at the cuff and already knew if there was a pulled thread, crooked seam, poorly attached button, wrong margin, any little thing that was out of place. I caught it before it left my hand. Besides the factory, I had my artisanal embroidery work that I did on Saturdays and Sundays. I woke up at 4:30 inches the morning on Saturday, set up my stand at the farmer's market, downtown Muncie, and stayed all day selling the towels, pillowcases, sheets, dish towels that I embroidered from Sunday to Sunday in the hours I had left, which actually were no hours at all. But I invented them. I embroidered from 10 at night until midnight every day. I embroidered at dawn when I couldn't sleep because of the pain from the beatings. I embroidered on Sunday from 8 inches the morning until 6 inches the afternoon. And with that, I made about $400 a month that added to the $847 from the factory and gave us about $1,200 to survive. Pay bills, buy food, pay for Caleb's physical therapy, which cost $120 a month. 3 times a week, the boy had to do those exercises so as not to completely atrophy what still worked in him. I embroidered in cross-stitch, satin stitch, backstitch, cut work. I learned a new technique every time I saw an old magazine in someone's house and became known at the market for making perfect embroidery. Embroidery that didn't have a stitch out of place, a loose thread, a crossed line. My hands are living proof of 38 years of needle stuck in fabric. The index fingers became permanently curved from pushing the needle into the cloth so much. They look like hooks. They don't straighten right anymore, not even if I force them. I see you looking at your own hands right now. Soft, straight, clean. My hands? They are ugly. They are twisted claws, but don't you dare pity them. These crooked fingers didn't just hold a needle. They held my sanity together when everything else was falling apart. Every callus is a shield, and I have calluses 0.15 inches thick right on the tip of each finger. Hard calluses like a horse's hoof that formed from piercing the skin with a needle over decades. The pain in the tendons is chronic. Tendinitis that started 20 years ago and never went away. There are days I can barely hold a coffee mug from so much shooting pain from wrist to elbow. But even so, I can thread a needle in the dark. You can turn off all the lights, and I'll thread it because my fingers know the way. They know the eye of the needle with eyes closed. It's muscle memory of someone who did the same thing millions of times in life. There is a thing in me that my mother, God rest her soul, always said would save me one day or drive me crazy. I count everything. Absolutely everything. I can't not count. I count the embroidery stitches while I work. 8,234 stitches in a large tablecloth. I count the steps from my house to the street. 17 steps. I count the times I step on the floor between the bed and the bathroom at dawn. 13 steps. I count how long it takes between Wayne arriving home drunk and starting to beat me. 11 minutes on average. I count how many punches he throws before getting tired. I count how many days the purple marks stay on my skin. My mother, Betty, a washerwoman who died in 1967, when I was only 15, taught me since I was little. Martha, something that isn't counted, doesn't exist. Numbers are proof. Write everything down. Keep everything. Because words disappear in the air, but numbers stay on paper. And I took that too seriously. I took it for the rest of my life. And it was because of that I managed to do what I did. I managed to prove what I proved. Martha's obsession with counting might sound like a burden, but make no mistake, this wasn't madness, it was ammunition. Her mother unknowingly handed her the exact weapon she would need to bring down a monster years later, proving that sometimes the quietest observers are the most dangerous. But before she became this master of evidence, she was just an innocent girl at a fair, about to walk straight into a trap disguised as a romance. I managed to bring down the whole scheme later. Today, in 2025, I live in this rented 3-room house here in Muncie. I pay $650 in rent, which comes out of my Social Security of $820, and I share the space with my son Caleb, who is 41, who works fixing watches at a small table in the living room and makes from $800 to $1,100 a month, depending on how many people show up, and who, since he was 8 years old, doesn't move anything from the waist down because of what his father did. I coordinate a network of 78 seamstresses spread across 6 states in the Midwest: Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Kentucky, Missouri. Women I taught personally or who learned from others. I taught to embroider evidences of domestic violence on towels, pillowcases, dish towels, pieces that later become evidence in processes at the police station, in court, at the public defender's office. And even today, this system I created is freeing women from violent men, but I'll tell that properly. Later on, for now, I need to go back to 1974, when I met Wayne and thought I had found the man of my life. I was 22 when I saw Wayne for the first time at the 4th of July fair in 1974, in the middle of the square decorated with colored flags, bonfire burning in the center, a band playing country music, smell of roasted corn and funnel cake in the air. He was a truck driver, 28 years old, drove a blue Mack truck on the route Muncie to Chicago, took loads of fabric there, and brought industrial products back here. He earned $3,200 a month, which at the time was good money. You could live well, and he was a handsome man. No one could disagree with that. 6'2", broad shoulders, wavy black hair, perfectly straight white teeth, a smile that fooled any fool like me. He asked me to dance, said I was the prettiest girl at the fair, brought me cotton candy, made me laugh with travel stories. And I, who had never had a serious boyfriend in my life, who spent the whole day working at the factory and the night embroidering, thought it was my luck to have found a man like that. The devil doesn't come to you with red skin and horns, darling. He comes with a smile that lights up the dark, holding a bouquet of flowers and promising you the world. He makes you believe you are the lucky one, right up until the moment the trap snaps shut. We dated for 6 months, only 6 months, between meeting and marrying, because he said he didn't want a long courtship, that a real man marries quickly, that I was the woman he was looking for. And I believed everything. I believed when he promised he was going to give me a good house, that I wouldn't need to work, that he was going to take care of me my whole life. My parents had already died, both of them. My father, Walter, in 65, my mother, Betty, in 67. I had no one to advise me, no one to tell me to be careful, and my brothers thought he was great. They thought I had lucked out catching a trucker who earned well. We got married in December 1974 at the Grace Baptist Church, a small neighborhood church, Pastor Severino officiating, party only with family, simple cake, everything modest, but happy. At least I thought it was happiness. What did I know about happiness back then? The first 3 months were good. They were even too good. He arrived early from trips, brought gifts from Chicago, lipstick, perfume, good fabric for me to make a dress, treated me with affection, slept holding me. With me, he didn't raise his voice, but he drank. That he always drank from the beginning. 4, 5 beers, every day when he arrived from work, whiskey on the weekend. And when he drank, he became different, became quiet, got heavy-eyed, but still hadn't hit me, still hadn't shown what he really was. The first time was in July 1974, July 19th, at 11:15 p.m. I remember because I started counting everything from then on. He arrived at 2 inches the morning without warning he would be late. I was worried, thinking something had happened, and when he entered the house, I said, "Wayne, where were you that you didn't even call?" And he turned to me and put his hand across my face with a force I never imagined existed. The slap busted my lower lip on the left side. Blood gushed instantly, ran down my chin, dripped on the white blouse I was wearing, and the pain was so strong I couldn't even scream. I stood there, looking at him, not understanding what had just happened. He said only this: "Woman doesn't control man. Man controls woman. Get used to it." I went to the ER bleeding. The nurse asked what happened. I lied that I had hit my mouth on the corner of the table. She didn't believe it, but gave me 3 stitches and sent me away. And I went back home with a swollen mouth, purple lip, soul destroyed, because it was the first time a man hit me in my whole life. And it was my husband of 3 months, the man who had promised to take care of me. I was 22, had nowhere to go, parents dead. Brothers lived far away, earned a misery at the factory, had no way to rent a house alone, no way to survive. So, when he came back 2 days later with Hershey's Kisses, which I loved, crying, apologizing, swearing it would never happen again, promising to stop drinking, I believed hope is a dangerous thing for a battered woman. It's more poisonous than the stuff I put in his whiskey. I didn't stay because I was weak. I stayed because I was arrogant enough to think my love could fix a broken man. I was wrong. You can't fix a rabid dog with chocolate. I believed because I wanted to believe, because I needed to believe. But it happened again. Of course it happened. In May of '75 was the second time. He threw the plate of food against the wall because he said it didn't have enough salt, punched me in the back, knocking me to the ground. I hit my knee on the corner of the table with so much force that a purple bruise 3 inches in diameter remained. This time I didn't even go to the clinic. I stayed home ashamed, afraid to go again, and someone suspecting. And then it became routine. 1 or 2 beatings a month when he drank, always with a silly excuse: unsalted food, poorly ironed clothes, tone of voice he didn't like, a look he thought was crooked. Anything served as a reason for him to beat me, and then came the excuse, the gift, the promise. And I always accepted because I had no choice, because I was raised believing that marriage is forever, that a woman has to endure, that God will give strength. In 1976, he kicked me in the right side of the body, breaking my floating rib. The pain to breathe was unbearable. I stayed 9 days without going to work. I went to Methodist Hospital to get an X-ray. Doctor Eric attended me, looked at me with that face of someone who knew exactly what had happened, but I said I had fallen off a bicycle, and he noted it in the chart without arguing. Don't be too quick to judge that, doctor. Those were different times. What happened behind closed doors stayed behind closed doors. He saw the bruises, yes, but he also saw the terror in my eyes, screaming, "If you call the police, I'm dead tonight." His silence, in a cruel way, was the only thing that let me go home alive. In 1979, he shoved my head into the tank full of water because I had complained that he was drinking too much. He held my neck tightly, pushed my face into the cold water, held it until I thought I was going to drown right there. He let go only when I stopped struggling, and I stayed coughing, vomiting water, desperate. And he laughed. He laughed in that disgusting way and said, "Next time, I won't let go." In '82, he pressed the steam iron, hot, smoking, on my left arm, because I had ironed his shirt with a small crease he thought was on purpose, to irritate him. He held the iron there until the skin sizzled, until the smell of burnt flesh rose, until I begged. And the mark remained, a round scar of 2.5 inches that I carry to this day. In '85, he took the broom handle and hit my left wrist with so much force that it fractured the bone. Broken wrist. Had to put a cast on. I stayed 42 days in a cast, lying to everyone that I had fallen, and the factory deducted the days I missed from my paycheck. In the middle of all this hell, in August 1984, my son, Caleb, was born. Difficult pregnancy I had at 32. Healthy boy of 7 pounds, natural birth, beautiful creature, who was the only good thing in my life. During the 8 months of pregnancy, Wayne stopped hitting me. He was afraid of hurting the baby, got almost affectionate again, and I actually thought a son would change him, would make him become a person. But 3 weeks after Caleb was born, when the child cried at dawn, and I took too long to make him quiet, Wayne punched me in the back and said, "Shut that child up, or I'll shut him up my way." That was when I understood my son would grow up seeing his mother get beaten, would grow up afraid of his father, would grow up in that hell with me. And it was the first time I thought about running away, but to where? With what money? With a 3-week-old baby in my arms? Caleb grew up beautiful, smart, affectionate, but grew up trembling with fear of his father. Every time he heard the noise of the truck arriving, the boy shrank. Every time Wayne raised his voice, the boy cried, and seeing that broke me, tore me apart inside. Knowing I was raising my son in an environment like that, but I couldn't leave, couldn't run away. I was trapped there by lack of choice, lack of money, lack of courage, until the 17th of August 1992, when Caleb had just turned 8. The thing happened that changed everything, that showed me that man wasn't just a coward who beat women. He was a monster capable of destroying his own son. It was 9:30 at night when Wayne arrived, stumbling, smelling of whiskey and tobacco from 10 feet away. He had drunk the whole bottle at Joe's bar. I found out later, Caleb was in the living room watching Tom and Jerry on TV, sitting on the floor with legs crossed. And when he saw his father arrive, he got up and went to ask with that thin, innocent child's voice, "Dad, can you give me $2 tomorrow so I can buy a popsicle?" Wayne stopped, looked at the boy, and said with a slurred, drunk voice, "Boys don't ask for money. Boys obey and shut their mouth." Caleb, who didn't understand malice because he was a child, answered without thinking, "But you promised last Saturday you would give it." And Wayne exploded, screamed, "Are you calling me a liar, brat?" He grabbed the boy's left arm with so much force it left a purple mark that lasted 2 weeks and started dragging him around the house. I tried to hold on. I grabbed Wayne's shirt, screamed for him to let the boy go, took an elbow to the nose that made blood gush instantly, but didn't let go. I went after him while he went up, up, up the 14 steps of the stairs that led to the deck of the house, dragging Caleb, who cried, screamed, begged, "Dad! No, Dad, stop! Please, Dad!" I arrived on the deck with them. I saw Wayne hold my son by both arms, lift him in the air, lift that 8-year-old child, 65 pounds of weight, 4 feet tall, and scream right in his face, "I'm going to teach you to respect, Father." And he threw my son backwards from a deck 14 feet high, straight onto the concrete floor of the backyard. The sound of Caleb's body hitting the ground was a sound that will never leave my head. A dull, heavy, wrong thud, sound of something breaking that shouldn't break. And when I ran down the stairs and got close to him, my boy was unconscious, blood coming out of his mouth, body twisted in a way that wasn't natural. The neighbor, Miss Dorothy, who lived next door and had heard the scream, called the ambulance. They took him to Methodist Hospital. They did emergency surgery that lasted 4 hours and 20 minutes with Dr. Henry, who was a neurosurgeon. And when it was over, the doctor came to talk to me with that face doctors make when the news is the worst possible. Fracture of 3 vertebrae, L1, L2, L3. Permanent paraplegia. Your son will never walk again in his life, Mrs. In those dark days, when I wanted to give up, there was only one light, Mrs. Dorothy. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was God's way of telling me not to jump off a bridge. When Wayne forbade me from crying in the house, Dorothy would pull me into her kitchen, hold my trembling hands, and say, "Martha, the Lord counts every tear. You are not alone." She couldn't stop Wayne, no one could, but she gave me the strength to breathe for one more day. Without her whispers of hope through the backyard fence, I would have died long before I ever bought that poison. Martha. Caleb stayed 18 days hospitalized, did intensive physical therapy, got a wheelchair donated by the city. Simple chair, uncomfortable, little wheel that stuck all the time. But it was what we had. And Wayne wasn't arrested, wasn't sued, nothing happened to him. Because when the police arrived at the hospital, when the doctor said he suspected it hadn't been an accident, when the social worker Sarah tried to investigate, I lied. I lied to everyone. Said it was an accident, that the boy was playing on the deck, that he slipped, that he fell, because Wayne had told me very clearly at the hospital, "If you report me, I kill you and kill the boy. You can choose." And Caleb, traumatized, afraid, 8 years old, confirmed the accident version when asked, and the case was closed. And that monster continued free, continued living in the same house, continued drinking, continued beating me, and now had started to humiliate my son too, calling him a cripple, useless, dead weight. The 22 years that passed between August of '92 and March of 2006 were 22 years of a hell that got worse, that became heavier, more suffocating, that now, besides getting beaten, I had to take care of paraplegic Caleb, take him to physical therapy 3 times a week, at 6 inches the morning, before going to work, pay $120 a month for physical therapy that came out of the embroidery money, bathe him, dress him, help him go to the bathroom, everything, and still work 8 hours at the factory, still embroider at night until dawn to sell at the market, still get beaten by Wayne on average twice a week, every time he drank. I never reported him again, never went to the police station again, because the first time hadn't done any good, had only made it worse. And I knew if I tried again it would be the same thing. They would send me back home, and I would get beaten even more for opening my mouth. It was in January 1993, 5 months after Caleb became paraplegic, that I made the most important decision of my life. I was going to document everything, every beating, every humiliation, every aggression. I was going to keep proof of everything that was happening, but it couldn't be on common paper, couldn't be in a notebook that he could find and destroy. It had to be in a way he would never suspect. I bought a small black notebook at the stationery store, started noting date, time, type of aggression, if there was a witness, every detail, but kept the notebook stuffed in the bottom of the mattress, knowing that at any moment he could discover it. And it was embroidering a tablecloth with red roses in March of '93 that I had the idea. I can embroider the dates here. I can create a code that only I understand. I can transform each flower into a record, each color into information, each petal into a marked day. I created my own system. Each flower represented an aggression. Rose was a slap, carnation was a punch, sunflower was a kick, lily was aggression with an object, daisy was a death threat. The number of petals on the flower was the day of the month it happened. So, if I embroidered a rose with 17 petals, it was because on the 17th I had been slapped. The thread color was the month. Red was January, orange was February, yellow was March, green was April. Light blue was May, dark blue was June, purple was July, pink was August, brown was September, burgundy was October, beige was November, gold was December. In the midst of her helplessness, Martha found a weapon no one expected, her needle. This stroke of genius allowed her to hide the truth in plain sight. But you have to wonder how long can she keep this secret before Wayne finds out. Sounds complicated to you, doesn't it? But when you live in hell, your mind gets as sharp as a needle. I didn't need a ledger to remember this color code, because the schedule of pain was already carved into my skin. I was simply transferring the bruising from my body onto the fabric. I embroidered 347 tablecloths over 13 years, from 1993 to 2006, each with 2 to 8 flowers, depending on how many times he hit me that month. And I sold these tablecloths at the market for $25 to $40 each. Women bought them thinking that neat embroidery was beautiful, never imagining that each flower there was a record of violence, that each counted petal was a documented day of suffering. I know some of you are asking, Martha, are you stupid? Why sell the evidence? But listen, honey, if I hide a notebook under the mattress, he can find it and burn it. But if I hide the evidence in the homes of 300 strangers, he'll never find it. Besides, a poor woman needs bread on the table more than she needs revenge. At least, back then she did. When I finally put that rat poison in his bourbon that night of the 14th of March 2006, it wasn't in a fit of rage, wasn't in a fit of despair. It was a cold, calculated, timed decision like everything I do in life. Because I am a woman who counts, who measures, who plans. I had gathered 347 embroidered proofs, had noted every aggression in the little black notebook, had kept the x-ray of the broken rib, had kept the blouse stained with blood from the first beating, had everything documented, and knew that sooner or later I would need to use it, but didn't imagine it would be the way it was. I was arrested, tried, sentenced to 20 years that turned into 14, which I served 12. And in those 12 years I spent in the Indiana Women's Prison, I taught 1,247 inmates to embroider, created what they call today the Martha Code, a system that 78 seamstresses in 6 states in the Midwest use to help women document domestic violence in a way no man suspects, in a way that becomes accepted proof in police stations, in courts, in the public defender's office. But for you to understand properly how a seamstress with crooked hands, from sticking needles in fabric so much, who earned $847 a month, after 38 years of factory work, managed to create a system that is freeing women from violent men to this day, that became official protocol of the Public Defender's Office of Indiana, that has already saved 412 women that I know of. I need to go back much further in this story. I need to go back to 1952, on April 7th, when I was born in a 3-room shack on Oak Street, in the South Side neighborhood, in Muncie, Indiana, a city that smelled of red dust and livestock market, a place where I learned from a very young age that a stitch made is a stitch counted, that numbers are proof, that things not written down don't exist, and that a poor woman's life only changes when she herself picks up the needle, the thread, and sews her own destiny stitch by stitch, flower by flower, proof by proof, until the day proof becomes justice and justice becomes freedom. But to truly understand why I count every stitch, why I obsess over numbers, we have to look deeper into my past. Back to that 3-room shack on Oak Street in 1952. Back to the red dust and the smell of the livestock market, because that poverty is what shaped me. On April 7th, when I was born, in a 3-room shack on Oak Street, in the South Side neighborhood, in Muncie, Indiana, a city that at that time was still small, full of red dust that the wind brought from the countryside, smell of livestock market every Thursday, noise of wagons passing on the cobblestone street, simple people who woke up with the sun and slept when it got dark, because electricity was a luxury poor people didn't have. The house where I was born was a mud and wattle construction that packed earth my father and uncles beat for 3 months until it became a solid wall. It had 3 rooms in total, a living room that served for everything, 2 small bedrooms where we huddled to sleep, and a kitchen that was just a corner with a wood stove and some crooked shelves nailed to the wall. Floor was beaten earth, that red clay my mother wet and packed every Saturday to stay smooth. Clay tiles on top that when it rained leaked in 5 different places. We put cans, basins, old pots to catch the water falling, and the noise of those drops dripping all night became lullabies. Bathroom was way back in the yard, a wooden outhouse with a hole in the ground, a pit my father dug with a hoe, no plumbing at all. We did our business there, and threw a bucket of water, then took a bath with a gourd with water that we fetched from Mrs. Dorothy's well, who lived 3 houses down. My father, Walter, was a carpenter, thin man, sunburnt, with thick hands, full of calluses, from handling rough wood so much, and he was missing the little finger of his left hand, which he had lost in an accident with a circular saw when he was 23. Cut off all at once, didn't even have time to feel pain properly. The finger flew far, and when he went to look, ants were already carrying it. He made custom furniture, beds, wardrobes, tables, chairs, whatever they asked, he made. He had a workshop set up right there in the backyard of the house, under a large oak tree that gave shade. Smell of sawdust mixed with varnish that left everything sticky, and earned $850 a month, around $1,960, which was about a minimum wage and a half. It was enough to buy food, but almost nothing was left. We lived in a tight squeeze at the end of the month, always owing at Mr. Johnson's general store, who sold on credit and charged with interest my father complained about, but paid because there was no way. My mother, Betty, was a washerwoman and seamstress. Short woman, strong, with hands always hurt from scrubbing clothes on the stone tank, broken nails, bleeding cuticles, palm full of blisters that burst and become sores. She washed clothes for 11 families in the neighborhood, earned $45 per large bundle, went to fetch dirty clothes on Saturday morning, washed Sunday all day, ironed with a coal iron on Monday and Tuesday, delivered everything folded on Wednesday, and with that made about $490 a month when she managed to work straight without stopping. Besides washing, she sewed clothes for outsiders. Didn't have a machine, no. It was all by hand. Needle, thread, thimble on the finger, and made dresses, skirts, shirts, pants, mended what was torn, hemmed, attached buttons, all for a pittance, because who looked for her were poor people like us. She woke up at 3:45 a.m. every single day. Not even on Sunday did she rest properly, and she only went to bed at 10:30 p.m., exhausted, with back pain, leg pain, and arm pain, but she never complained. She always said work is a blessing, and God helps those who help themselves. We were 6 siblings in total. I was the 4th, Oscar, who was the oldest. Then came Debbie, then Jenny, me, Martha, and lastly Adam and Cindy, who were the youngest. We slept all squeezed, girls in one room, boys in the other, on corn husk mattresses my mother filled and sewed, thin blanket that warmed almost nothing in winter. And when it was too cold, we huddled on top of each other to warm up. Food at home was always the same thing. Breakfast was grits. When there were eggs, we ate grits with fried egg. When there weren't, it was plain grits with black coffee without sugar, because sugar was expensive. Lunch was beans, rice, thick cassava mush, or mashed potatoes, and meat only twice a week. Always salted jerky my mother desalted in water and sautéed with onion and tomato. Dinner was leftovers from lunch heated up, or when nothing was left, it was bone soup my mother got for free at the butcher shop. Bone with a little bit of meat stuck that she boiled with potato, carrot, squash, whatever there was. And that became soup for everyone. Bath was 3 times a week. Wasn't every day, no. We filled the gourd with cold water from the pot and washed right there in the yard, behind the outhouse, dying of cold when it was winter. And in summer, the water warmed in the sun and got lukewarm, which was actually nice. I started working very early, something that nowadays they call child labor, but at that time was normal. Every poor kid worked. There was no such thing as just playing. No. At 6 years old, I already helped my mother hang clothes on the line, took wet pieces from the basin, passed to her who pinned with wooden clothespins, and stayed hours there in the hot sun of the yard, seeing sheets, towels, shirts waving in the wind. At 8, I learned simple stitches to attach buttons. My mother gave me a needle, thread, taught me to thread the line in the needle hole, make a knot at the tip, pass through the buttonhole, and fabric 4 times, knot underneath and cut. And I practiced so much I got fast, attached a button in 5 minutes. At 10, I already hemmed sheets, those white sheets my mother sewed to sell. I folded the edge, basted first with a wide stitch so as not to be crooked, then passed the definitive stitch very tiny, and my mother checked. If there was a stitch out of place, she ordered to undo and do again. At 12, I embroidered initials on napkins my mother sold for $15 each. Embroidered the letter of the person's name, did it very neatly, and already liked that. I already felt pleasure seeing the little flower appearing on the white fabric as the needle went in and out. The day that changed my whole life was the 23rd of November 1964. I had just turned 12, and my mother received a large order from a rich lady downtown, Mrs. Eulalia Smith, who was marrying off her daughter and wanted 30 embroidered placemats, those cloths put under the plate on the table, all with flower designs, all symmetrical, all perfect. The deadline was 15 days, and the payment was $450, half of what we paid for rent of the house to the landowner, money that was sorely needed. My mother called me to help because alone she wouldn't manage and started teaching me her technique. Martha, crooked embroidery is lost embroidery. Client doesn't pay. It has to be perfect. You have to count. Count what, Mom? I asked. Count everything, girl. Count the stitches of each flower petal. 15 stitches in each petal. Neither 14 nor 16. Has to be 15. Exactly. Count the space lines between one flower and another. 12 lines, always 12. Check 3 times before cutting the thread, because if you cut wrong, you lost the whole job. I learned there in those 15 days, embroidering like crazy morning, afternoon, night, that counting was the only way to guarantee it was right, that symmetry depended on numbers, that beauty was mathematics. I started applying this to everything in my life. I counted the 9 steps of the stairs at the neighbor's house, counted the 48 tiles in the godmother's bathroom, counted the 347 steps I took from my house to the municipal school where I studied in the morning. It became a vice, became a necessity. I couldn't see anything anymore without counting, and my mother laughed, said, "Girl, you were born to be a seamstress. You have the head of someone who doesn't forget. Head that keeps numbers like a safe keeps money." And it was true. I kept everything, remembered everything. If she asked me how many stitches I had made in an embroidery I did last week, I remembered instantly. 8,234. Remembered because I had counted while doing it. When I turned 14 inches April, $1,966. My mother managed to get a little job for me at Mr. Waldemar's tailor shop in downtown Muncie, near the main square. I went to work all Saturday, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., hemming men's pants. Those suit pants men used to work in banks, in registry offices, in public offices, earned $120 a month. It was little, but helped at home, and I loved that work. Loved picking up the fabric, measuring exactly the hem height, folding, basting, passing on the sewing machine Mr. Waldemar had, making that invisible top stitch no one saw from outside. I got so fast at this I could make a perfect hem in 4 minutes and 30 seconds, timed, and Mr. Waldemar was impressed, said he had never seen such a young girl with so much precision. But the most important lesson I received from my mother was when I was 15, right after I had my birthday in April 1967. She called me, sat with me at the kitchen table, and showed a tiny black hardcover notebook she kept inside the flour tin, hidden in the back where no one touched. Opened the notebook in front of me and showed. Everything was noted there. Every piece of clothing she had washed in the last 28 years of work. Client's name, date, piece, how much charged, how much received, if owing. There was also a note of every piece of clothing she sewed, every mend she made, every yard of fabric she bought, every spool of thread she spent. There were 47 notebooks like that one, all full of tiny notes. My mother's shaky handwriting, who barely knew how to write, but noted everything neatly. And she said one thing that stuck in my head to this day. Martha, a poor woman only has one defense in life, and that defense is called memory. Man says he doesn't owe, you show in the notebook. Boss says he already paid, you show the receipt. Husband says he gave you money, you show how much is missing. Poor people's life is like this. Note, keep, prove. Words disappear in the air, paper stays. That's the only inheritance poor folks like us get. We don't have gold or land to leave our children. My mother didn't leave me money, but she left me the only weapon that saved me from the death penalty later on. The habit of recording every single debt life owes you, whether it's a penny or a drop of blood. 2 months after this conversation, in June 1967, my mother was washing clothes in the tank when she had a stroke. Fell right there with her face in the soapy water. The neighbor, Mrs. Carmen, who saw through the window, ran, pulled her, called my father, took her to the hospital, but she stayed 2 days agonizing and died without managing to speak anything else. She was only 51 years old, worked like a slave her whole life, and died washing rich people's clothes. Left the 47 notebooks kept inside a wooden box under the bed, and I took those notebooks, kept them with me, have them to this day. Yellowed pages, smell of mold, but everything is there. Every note she made since 1939 until 1967. And I swore that day, at her funeral, in the Muncie cemetery, under the hot June sun, while they put the coffin in the red earth, I'm going to do like you, Mom. I'm going to note everything in life. Everything that happens to me will be registered, kept, proved. 3 months after my mother's death, in March 1968, I got a job at the Hoosier Textile Mill, huge corrugated iron shed that heated like an oven in summer, with 240 employees, mostly women, working on noisy industrial sewing machines that made us have to scream to talk. I entered there at 16. Signed card, salary of $180 a month, which later became $200, then $300, went up as years passed, but always slow, always meager. My function was to sew shirt cuffs, those cuffs so they fasten on the person's wrist, and the goal was 100 pieces a day, then increased to 2,000, 400 inches, 1,975. When the factory became tighter, more demanding, more exploitative, it was 8 hours straight, threading, passing fabric through the machine, cutting leftovers, checking if the button was firm, if the seam was straight, if the margin was right. Everything on automatic, hand going and coming until numb. In 1970, there was an internal speed championship at the factory to see who could sew more cuffs in 8 hours. And I won, made 2,190 cuffs, without stopping, without missing one, and won a prize of $50 that I used to buy food. In 73, promoted to senior seamstress. Salary went up to $340. started supervising 3 new girls who entered. Taught them not to leave pulled thread, crooked seam, skipped stitch. In 78, became in charge of the whole sector. 12 seamstresses working under me, salary of $780, and the responsibility to guarantee no piece left with defect, because if it did I paid, deducted from my salary. During the 38 years I worked there, from 68 until 2006, when I was arrested and they fired me, never ever had a piece rejected for defect, because my eye was trained. My eye caught 23 different types of error in a fraction of a second. Pulled thread, crooked seam, skipped stitch, wrong thread tension, loose button, margin larger on one side than the other, gathered fabric. Anything that was wrong I saw before the piece left my front. I taught this method to 140 seamstresses over 30 years. Girls who entered knowing nothing and left professionals and nicknamed me at the factory Eagle Eye because they said I saw what no one saw. But working at the factory wasn't enough. Money was little, always missing at month's end. So, in 1972, I started doing artisanal embroidery to sell, just like my mother did. Embroidered at night, from 10 until midnight, 2 hours, every single day. After arriving tired from the factory, after making dinner, washing dishes, tidying the house. Saturday I embroidered from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., 8 hours straight. Sunday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 10 hours. And in this I managed to produce 8 to 12 pieces a month. Tablecloth, pillowcase, dish towel, napkin, all hand embroidered with care, with perfection, with symmetry only I knew how to do. In 1975, I started setting up a stand every Saturday at the farmer's market. Woke up 4:30 a.m., arranged pieces in a cardboard box, took the 5:15 bus, set up the cloth tent I rented from a gentleman there for $2 a day, spread my embroideries on top of the wooden crate, and stayed there from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. selling, shouting, "Look at the embroidery, look at the embroidered towel. Fine work, neat, come see." I became known. At the market, women started looking for my embroidery because it was different, it was too perfect, didn't have a stitch out of place, didn't have cross thread, was symmetrical in a way machine embroidery couldn't be. Customers always returned, placed orders, asked for towels with specific initials, pillowcase with rose design, dish towel with chicken design, and I did everything, accepted everything, embroidered everything. In 1989, I came to have a 3-month waiting list, people who ordered and had to wait 3 months to receive because I didn't have time to do everything they asked, even embroidering every day until dawn, even pulling all-nighters Saturday and Sunday, couldn't keep up, but didn't increase price. Continued charging fair. $25, small towel, $40 large. Because it was poor people who bought. It was women like me who wanted to have a beautiful towel to receive visitors, but couldn't pay expensive. And it was selling embroidery at the market, talking to women who bought, hearing their life stories, that I started realizing it wasn't just me who got beaten by husband, that there were a bunch of women suffering silently, enduring beatings, enduring humiliation, without having anywhere to go, without having a way out. There were women who arrived to buy towels with a black eye, with swollen lip, with bandaged arm. And when I asked what happened, she said she fell, hit the door, tripped on the stairs, the same lies I told. And I kept thinking, why do we lie? Why do we protect who is destroying us? But I knew the answer. It was fear. Fear of getting beaten more. Fear of being killed. Fear of being left with nowhere to live, without having how to support the children. Fear of everything. Martha's eagle eye didn't just catch loose threads at the factory. It allowed her to spot the hidden truth behind every bruise at that market, realizing she was part of a silent, terrified sisterhood. She didn't know it yet, but this shared pain was the soil where the Martha Code would eventually grow. But first, we have to go back to the moment she met the man who would force her to invent it. I met Wayne at the 4th of July fair in June 1974. I was 22, never had a serious boyfriend, only some silly flirtations that came to nothing. He was there in the square where they set up the festival. That bunch of flags hanging from pole to pole, booths selling roasted corn, funnel cake, peanut brittle, cornbread, big bonfire in the middle of the square, band playing lively country music, people dancing close. He approached me, Asked to dance and I accepted because I thought him handsome, thought him interesting. Trucker of 28 years who drove a blue Mack truck on the Muncie to Chicago route, took fabric loads there and brought industrial products back here. Was tall, 6'2", broad shoulders, wavy black hair, white teeth, all straight, smile that deceived, that deluded, that made us think we had found the right man. We danced 3 songs in a row. He brought me warm corn in a plastic cup, made me laugh telling travel stories, of cities he knew, of things he saw on the road. And when the party ended, he asked to see me again, noted my address, said he would appear next Saturday. We dated 6 months, only 6 months between meeting and marrying, because he said he wasn't a man for long courtships, that a real man, when he finds the right woman, marries quickly. And I, silly, inexperienced, thought that beautiful. Thought it was because he loved me too much and didn't want to wait. He earned well, $3,200 a month, good money for the time, and promised he would give me a good house, that I wouldn't need to work, that he would take care of me, that he would make me happy. My brothers thought him great, thought I had lucked out catching a trucker who earned well, who had a profession, who was hard-working, and no one noticed what I also didn't notice, that he drank every day, arrived from work and drank 4, 5 beers. Weekend drank whiskey, and when he drank he became different. Got heavy-eyed, with thick voice, with strange manner, but still hadn't beaten me, still hadn't shown who he really was. We married in December 1974 at the Grace Baptist Church. Small neighborhood church, Pastor Severino celebrating Mass. Party only with family. Simple white cake with frosting my sister-in-law Jenny made. Everything modest, everything simple. But I was happy, or thought I was. Dressed in white dress I sewed myself, flower wreath on head, daisy bouquet in hand. The first 3 months were good. They were even too good. He arrived early from trips, brought me gifts from Chicago, Avon lipstick, cheap perfume, beautiful fabric for me to make a dress, treated me with affection, slept hugging me, called me my love, my princess. Didn't raise voice, but continued drinking. That he never stopped. 4, 5 beers every day, whiskey on weekend. And when he drank, stayed quiet, sulky, with closed face, but still hadn't laid a hand on me. And it was in March 1975, 3 months after married, that he showed who he really was. That started the 30 years of hell that would only end when I put rat poison in his bottle and ended that once and for all. The first beating happened on the 19th of March 1975 at 11:15 at night. I know the exact time because I looked at the wall clock in the living room when I heard the key turning in the lock. It was him arriving, and I was already worried sick because it had passed midnight and he hadn't warned he would be late. When he opened the door, he stumbled, hit his shoulder on the frame, and came that strong smell of beer and whiskey mixed. Smell I would learn to recognize from afar, to fear, to know meant danger. I got up from the sofa where I was waiting for him, went to the door and said only this: "Wayne, where were you that you didn't even warn?" I was worried, thought something had happened. He stopped in the middle of the room, turned to me slowly, and his eye was different, was hard, was with that thing I had never seen before, and said with slurred voice, "Are you controlling me?" "Yeah, wanting to know where I am, who I'm with, what I do." And before I could answer anything, he raised his hand and put a slap on my face with so much force my head turned to the side, neck cracked, and felt taste of blood in mouth at same time. Lower lip on left side burst, tore inside. Blood gushed hot, running down chin, dripping on white cotton blouse I was wearing, staining everything red. And pain was so absurd, so unexpected, that I stayed there standing, without managing to scream, without managing to cry, just looking at him, not understanding what had just happened. He said only this, with firm, calm, frightening voice: "Woman doesn't control man. Man controls woman. Get used to it," and went to bedroom to sleep as if nothing had happened. Left me there bleeding in living room, with mouth throbbing, with heart racing, with fear. Picked up a dish towel, pressed against lip, and stayed there sitting until blood stopped coming out, more or less an hour later. Early morning, went to clinic. Lip was swollen, like purple ball, pulsating. Nurse who attended looked and asked right away, "What was this?" Answered lie I would repeat hundreds of times in next 30 years. Fell. Hit mouth on table corner. She didn't believe. Saw in her eye she didn't believe, but gave 3 stitches without asking more questions and sent me away. Kept blood-stained blouse in back of wardrobe. Washed, but stain didn't come out. Stayed there, that brown mark of dried blood. First physical record of what would become routine. 2 days later, he returned from work with a box of Hershey's Kisses, which he knew I loved. Kneeled in front of me. Cried. Apologized with choked voice. Said it would never happen again, that had drunk too much, that didn't know what he was doing, that loved me, that I was woman of his life. Promised would stop drinking. That would change. That would be husband I deserved. And I, with 22 years, without any life experience, without having seen my mother go through this, because my father never laid a hand on her, believed. Believed because wanted to believe, because needed to believe, because had just married 3 months ago and couldn't accept had chosen wrong, that had married violent man. He stopped drinking for 11 days, counted every day, and in those 11 days was attentive, affectionate, arrived early, brought flowers, helped wash dishes. And I thought, see, he changed. It was just that time, won't happen again. But on 12th day he returned to drink, and next month happened again. May 1975, not even 2 months after first beating, I had made lunch, rice, beans, ground beef, and when put plate in front of him, he tasted, made ugly face, and said, "This is without salt." I answered, "But I tasted. It's normal." He took plate and threw on wall with force. Plate shattered. Food spread on wall, on floor. Shards of crockery flew, and before I could move, he got up, came in my direction, and put a punch in my back, right in middle of back, a closed fist that knocked me to ground. Fell on knees, hit right knee on corner of wooden table. With so much force I heard noise of bone hitting, and pain went up whole leg, like electric shock. Stayed there on floor trying to breathe, feeling back burning, knee throbbing, and he passed over me, took truck key, and left slamming door. Hematoma on knee became dark purple of 3 inches in diameter, took 3 weeks to disappear completely, and this time didn't even go to clinic. Stayed home with shame, with fear of going again and someone suspecting, someone asking, someone forcing me to speak truth I didn't want to speak. And then became pattern, became routine that repeated every month. 1 beating, 2 beatings when he drank, always with silly excuse. Food he said was bad, clothes he thought poorly ironed, tone of voice he didn't like, look he interpreted as disrespect. Anything served as motive for him to raise hand. He arrived drunk. I already knew what was coming. Already started trembling before he opened mouth. Counted mentally. 11 minutes. Is time it takes between him arriving and starting. And always came excuse after. Always came crying, gift, promise that never again. And I always accepted because had no option, had nowhere to go, didn't earn enough money to rent house alone. My brothers lived all far away, in other cities. And in my head of woman raised in 50 seconds, 60 seconds, marriage was forever. Woman had to endure, had to have patience. God would give strength, would change his heart, was just matter of time. In 1976, came first grave injury. He gave me a kick on right side of body, hit right on ribs, a kick of heavy trucker boot that broke my floating rib, that small rib that stays under everything. Pain to breathe was unbearable. Every time filled lung with air, felt knife in chest. Couldn't go to work for days, lost days of salary, and had to go to Methodist Hospital do x-ray because pain didn't pass. Thought had something very wrong. Dr. Eric attended me. Serious man of about 50 years, thick glasses, starched white coat, looked at x-ray in front of that light, pointed with pen, and said, "Broken rib, clean fracture, but broken." How did this happen? Lied again. Fell, from bicycle doctor, fell on top of a rock. He took off glasses, cleaned slowly with tip of coat, looked me straight in eyes for about 5 seconds that seemed eternal and said, "Ma'am, this fracture here is compatible with kick, not with fall. You want to tell me truth?" And I, coward, fearful, trapped in that life, answered, "It is truth, doctor." Fell from bicycle. He noted in chart without discussing more. Prescribed painkiller, gave note for 15 days, and dismissed me with that look of who knew, but couldn't do anything. Past years like this, 77, 78, always same thing. Until in 79 happened one of worst. One I thought would die really. I had complained he was drinking too much, that was spending too much money with whiskey and beer, that money was missing to buy food at home, and he became possessed. Grabbed me by hair, dragged to tank that was full of water with soap, because I was going to wash clothes, and shoved my head inside cold water, held my neck with force, pushed my face down and held while I struggled, while tried to pull air and only pulled water, while felt lungs burning, head exploding, despair taking over, certainty that was going to drown right there inside that tank. Let go only when stopped struggling, when my body became limp and pulled my head out by hair, stayed there coughing, vomiting water, desperate, crying, begging. And he laughed in that disgusting way and spoke very close to my ear. Next time I won't let go. Stayed 3 days with chest pain, coughing water, feeling shortness of air, and never again complained of drink, never again complained of money, never again complained of anything. In 82, he took ironing iron I had just turned off, but was still hot, smoking, and pressed on my left arm, because said I had ironed his shirt with small burn mark he thought was on purpose to irritate him. Held iron there, hot metal base stuck to my skin, until heard sizzle, until felt smell of burnt flesh rising, until I begged, screaming, "Stop, Wayne, for love of God, stop." Mark remained. Round scar of 2.5 inches on left arm that carry to this day. Mark that will never leave, that is there forever reminding me. In 85, he took broom handle, thick wooden handle, and hit my left wrist with so much force that fractured bone, breaking clean. Wrist that swelled instantly, that hurt like devil, that had to put cast and stay 42 days in cast. Counted every day and lied to everyone that had fallen from stairs, that had tried to hold myself and wrist broke. Factory deducted days missed from my salary. Came to earn only $400 that month. Didn't give for almost nothing. In middle of all this hell of beating, of fear, of pain, happened one good thing, only good thing, of that damned marriage. In November 1983, discovered, was pregnant, was 31 years old. Thought wouldn't manage to have child because already had tried for 9 years and never got pregnant. But suddenly came unexpected pregnancy. Difficult, with terrible nausea in first 4 months, but came. When told Wayne, he was happy, was genuinely happy, smiled in that wide way and said, "It will be a man, will be trucker like father, will drive truck with me when grows up." And during 8 months of pregnancy, he stopped beating me, was afraid of hurting baby, became even affectionate again, brought fruit, asked if I was well, if needed anything, and I came to have hope, silly hope, that child would change him, would make him become person, would make him stop drinking and beating. Caleb was born in August 1984, natural birth that lasted 7 hours. Beautiful boy of 7 pounds, fair skin, black hair, crier, healthy, perfect. But peace lasted little. 3 weeks after Caleb was born, in a dawn of September, boy cried a lot. Cried in that way newborn cries, hunger, colic, discomfort, and I got up to breastfeed to calm, but was taking long. Boy didn't stop. And Wayne was drunk, had arrived late from street, had drunk too much and screamed from bedroom. Shut that child up. Went there. Took Caleb in lap. Tried to calm faster. But baby doesn't understand hurry. Baby cries when needs. And Wayne got up from bed, came to living room and gave me punch in back, screaming. I said shut that child up. Punch threw me forward. Almost let Caleb fall. Held him tight against chest. Protected him with my body. And was at that moment, with my son of 3 weeks in lap, that thought for first time. He will do this to my son too. Will beat him when grows up. Will hurt him like hurts me. And did, of course did. Caleb grew up seeing father arrive drunk and beat mother. Grew up hearing scream, noise of slap, of punch, of thing breaking. Grew up with fear. Starting from years of age, he already witnessed everything. Saw father push me, curse me, beat me, and cried hidden in corner of room. Screamed with thin little voice. Stop, Dad, don't hit Mom. But Wayne ignored, continued beating, or worse, looked at boy and said, shut mouth, brat, or get beaten too. Caleb started trembling every time heard noise of truck arriving. Every time father opened door, boy shrank. Stayed tiny in corner, quiet, trying not to call attention, trying not to provoke wrath of that man who should protect him, but only cause terror. I tried to protect my son, tried to stay between him and father, but couldn't, didn't help. Wayne was bigger, stronger, and when wanted to beat me, beat. Didn't matter if boy was watching, didn't matter if boy was crying, didn't matter anything. Until on the 17th of August, 1992, day that changed everything. Day that showed that man had no limit, no humanity, no nothing of father inside him. Happened tragedy that destroyed life of my son forever. Was 9:30 at night. Remember, because Tom and Jerry had just started on TV, and Caleb was sitting on living room floor watching, laughing at those messes of program. Innocent 8-year-old boy, happy at that moment. Wayne arrived, stumbling, banging on doorframe. Smell of whiskey so strong gave to smell from 10 feet away. And later came to know by owner of Joe's Bar that he had drunk whole bottle of bourbon in 2 hours. Had left there completely intoxicated, driving drunk through city until arriving home. Caleb, who didn't understand malice because was child, got up from floor, went to father with that happy face, and asked with thin voice, "Dad, can you give me $2 tomorrow so I can buy popsicle?" Wayne stopped, looked at boy and said with slurred, thick voice, "Boy doesn't ask for money. Boy obeys and shuts mouth." Caleb, without understanding, was provoking dangerous thing, answered with innocence, "But you promised last Saturday you would give." And Wayne exploded, screamed with thunder voice, "Are you calling me liar, brat, saying I don't keep promise?" And grabbed boy's left arm with so much force his fingers sank into thin child skin, leaving purple mark that lasted 2 weeks. Those round finger marks that stay when squeeze hard. Started screaming, "Let go of boy, Wayne, for love of God, let go." Tried to pull his arm, tried to release Caleb, but he gave me elbow to nose that made blood gush instantly, threw me on floor and started dragging Caleb through whole house, boy screaming, crying, begging, "Dad, no, Dad, stop please." Dragged him to stairs that led to deck. Started climbing 14 steps. I got up bleeding, went up behind, screaming, begging, trying to hold. But he went up, 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 and when arrived up there on deck, I saw most terrifying thing ever saw in life. He held my 8-year-old son by 2 arms, lifted him in air, that child of 65 pounds, 4 feet tall, lifted and held there high and screamed right in his face, "Going to teach you to respect, father," and threw my son backwards from a deck of 14 feet height. Measurement expert made later, threw straight on concrete floor of backyard, and noise of Caleb's body hitting ground was a sound that never, never will leave my head. A dull, heavy, wrong thud. Sound of thing breaking that shouldn't break. Sound of bone cracking, flesh smashing, life being destroyed. Ran downstairs, tripped, almost fell. Arrived near my son and saw him lying crooked on ground, unconscious, blood coming out mouth, ears, body in position that wasn't natural, and started screaming. Screaming without stopping. Scream that came from bottom of my soul. Despair never felt before. Neighbor Mrs. Dorothy, who lived next door and had heard thud, scream, came running, jumped low wall dividing backyards, saw Caleb on ground and screamed, "Call ambulance! For love of God, call ambulance!" She herself ran, called from corner phone booth. Ambulance arrived 15 minutes later. Paramedics took Caleb carefully, put on stretcher, took to Methodist Hospital running, siren on, and I went behind in Mrs. Dorothy's car praying, begging God not to take my son, not to take my boy. Arriving at hospital, took him straight to emergency surgery. Dr. Henry, neurosurgeon of 50-something years, entered with him in operating room at 10:20 p.m. and only left at 2:40 a.m., 4:20 of surgery. Delicate, complicated, dangerous operation. When ended, doctor came to talk to me with that face doctor makes when going to give bad news, that controlled, professional expression, but lets escape sadness in eyes, and said slowly, choosing every word, "Mrs. Martha, your son had fracture of 3 vertebrae of lumbar spine, L1, L2, and L3, severe fracture with spinal cord compromise. We did what we could, but prognosis is permanent paraplegia. He won't walk ever again in life. Won't have movement from waist down. Will need wheelchair for rest of days." Heard that, and felt floor disappear under my feet. felt worlds spin, felt was falling in bottomless hole. And only thing managed to ask with broken voice was, "Will he live?" And doctor answered, Will live, but will need intensive care, constant physical therapy, medical monitoring forever. Caleb stayed 18 days hospitalized in hospital. Intensive physical therapy, not to atrophy muscles that still worked, and when discharged, came home in wheelchair donated by city. Simple model, uncomfortable, with little wheel sticking all time, hard seat. But was what had. Our house had no accessibility at all. Bathroom door too narrow for chair to pass. Had step at entrance. Caleb couldn't do anything alone. Needed help for everything. Bathing, dressing, going to bathroom, eating everything. Started taking him to physical therapy 3 times a week. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, at 6 a.m. before going to work. Clinic across town paid $120 a month, 20% of my salary. Money coming out of embroidery I sold at market, because from factory salary, nothing was left. And Wayne wasn't arrested, wasn't sued, nothing happened to him. Because when police arrived at hospital, when Dr. Henry looked at fractures and said suspected that hadn't been child playing accident. That type of fracture was compatible with thrown fall from height, not stumble, and asked 3 times to me, "Was it really accident, ma'am? Are you sure was accident?" I lied. Lied to police, lied to doctor, lied to social worker. Sarah, who came trying to investigate, said was accident. That boy was playing on deck, that slipped, that fell. Because Wayne had told me very clearly in hospital corridor, had cornered me against wall, and spoken with low, firm, threatening voice. "If you report me, if you open mouth, I kill you and kill boy, can choose." And Caleb, with 8 years old, traumatized, full of fear, confirmed accident version when social worker asked, said, crying was playing, "That fell, that wasn't anyone's fault," and case was closed as domestic accident. Wayne continued living in same house, continued sleeping in same bed, continued drinking same whiskey, continued beating me with same frequency, and now had started also to humiliate Caleb, calling him cripple, useless, dead weight, son who served for nothing, who never would be real man, who was shame. Broke boy's wheelchair twice, kicked until cracked backrest, bent wheel, and I fixed with wire, with duct tape, with what had, because didn't have money to buy new chair. The 22 years passed between August 92 and March 2006 were 22 years living in hell, only worsening, becoming heavier, more unbearable each day. In January 1993, 5 months after Caleb became paraplegic, took decision that saved my life and life of hundreds other women later, going to document everything, every beating, every aggression, every humiliation, and keep proof of everything happening. Bought small black cover notebook at Nancy's stationery, cost $2.50, and started noting just like Mom taught me. That cheap notebook was the first silent act of rebellion in a house ruled by terror. But Martha quickly realized that paper could be burned and secrets could be found. She needed a safer way to scream for justice, something so invisible that she could stitch the evidence of her pain right under Wayne's nose without him ever suspecting a thing. Date, exact time, type of aggression, if witness, every detail. But kept notebook stuffed in bottom of mattress inside plastic bag not to mold, knowing at any moment he could discover, could find that notebook and destroy everything and beat me more for daring to note. Was in March 93. Was embroidering large tablecloth with flowers, red roses client had ordered. And while embroidering went thinking, notebook he can find and destroy, but embroidery he will never suspect. Embroidery is work, is woman thing, is harmless. Nobody imagines can have hidden information there. And had idea, can embroider dates here. Can create code only I understand. Can transform each flower into violence record. Created system in my head while embroidering. Each flower would represent aggression. Rose was slap. Carnation was punch. Sunflower was kick. Lily was aggression with object like broom handle or iron. Daisy was death threat. Number of petals on flower was day of month happened. So, if I embroidered rose with 19 petals, meant on 19th I had taken slap, and thread color represented month. Red was January, orange February, yellow March, green April, light blue May, dark blue June, purple July, pink August, brown September, wine October, beige November, gold December. Embroidered 347 tablecloths over 13 years, from 1993 to 2006. Each had 2 to 8 flowers, depending on how many times he hit me that month, and sold these towels at fair every Saturday for $25, small, $40 large. And women bought, thinking beautiful that neat, colorful, symmetrical embroidery, never imagining each flower there was record of suffering. Each petal counted was day of documented pain. Each color was month of cataloged hell. Kept black notebook with code translation hidden inside mattress. Noted there, red rose, 19 petals equals slap, March 19th, orange carnation, 5 petals equals punch, February 5th. And went accumulating proof, embroidering proof, selling proof without anyone knowing. Now tell me one thing, and want you to be sincere with me. Do you think I'm crazy, having stayed 13 years embroidering proofs instead of going to police station again? Think I should have reported again, even knowing first time came to nothing, that lied for fear and police closed, and if tried again would be same thing? Would send me back home, and would get beaten double when returned. So do following. If you think I was right preparing before acting, gathering silent proof for years, creating system he would never discover, like this video now. But if you think I'm crazy, should have gone to police again to get beaten more when returned home, should have trusted system already failed me before, then don't like. I'll know exactly how many people here understand poor woman has nowhere to run, that police station often solves nothing, that judge doesn't believe woman's word without physical proof, and sometimes only way out is stay quiet, endure, gather proof slowly, stitch by stitch, flower by flower, towel by towel, until have enough material to prove what no one would believe just by my word. Like there, want to see how many of you understand me truly. The day I decided that man was going to die was the 14th of March 2006. But decision didn't come suddenly. Came after specific event happened at 9:15 that night, when Wayne arrived home coming straight from Joe's bar, where had spent whole afternoon drinking, according to what Joe himself told me later. Caleb was in bedroom, was 21 years old at that time, sitting in old wheelchair I had fixed with wire for third time and had soiled himself, had spilled coffee on shirt accidentally, and when heard father arrive, called from bedroom door, "Dad, help me change clothes, please. Dirty myself here." Wayne stopped in hall, looked at boy, and answered with thick drunk voice, "Lazy cripple, manage alone, learn to manage." Caleb insisted, said couldn't reach clean shirt and wardrobe, needed help. And Wayne entered room with that face I already knew, that face of rage ready to explode. Took Caleb's wheelchair. That chair I had cared for with so much affection for 22 years that I had fixed countless times, which was only way my son moved around house. And kicked. Kicked with boot. Heavy trucker. Kicked backrest until cracked wood. Kicked wheel until bent metal rim. Kicked until chair flipped on floor. Destroyed. Useless. Broken in pieces. Caleb was sitting in it when he started kicking. Fell with chair, hit shoulder on floor, and stayed lying there, unable to get up, because had no movement in legs, no way to lift self alone, and started crying. Crying in way broke my heart. Crying despair, humiliation, pain. Ran to room, saw my son fallen on floor, saw destroyed chair next to him and Wayne standing, looking at that with satisfaction face, as if had done something needed doing. Didn't think. Just acted. Threw myself between him and Caleb. Screamed, "Stop this. For love of God, he is your son." And Wayne, instead of stopping, grabbed Caleb by hair, pulled him along floor, dragging, boy screaming in pain, hands trying to hold floor, trying to break, but failing because legs didn't help, didn't push. And he dragged my son by hair from bedroom to living room, leaving scratch mark on concrete floor. Tried to stop, grabbed Wayne's arm, pulled with force, and he turned to me and put hand on my mouth with so much violence I felt tooth loose. Right lateral incisor came out root. Flew far. Fell on floor with little bit of blood stuck, and pain was immediate, sharp. Taste of blood filling whole mouth. He dropped Caleb in middle of living room, took truck key, and said before leaving, "Going to buy more whiskey. When I return, want this house tidy and this cripple shut up." Slam door. Heard truck start, Engine noise moving away, and stayed there on floor with mouth bleeding, tooth missing, and my son of 21 years lying in middle of living room crying, without wheelchair, without way to move, humiliated in worst way possible. It was 11:40 at night when sat on floor next to Caleb, wiped blood from mouth with blouse hem, and thought with clarity never had before. Already 30 years. 30 years getting beaten. 30 years enduring. 30 years waiting him change. And he didn't change. Never will change. Will continue until kills me or kills Caleb for good. Looked at my crooked hands from so much embroidering, curved fingers that don't straighten anymore. Thick calluses on tips, and thought of 347 embroideries I kept in cardboard box under bed. 347 towels with colorful flowers documenting every beating, every aggression, every day of suffering of last 13 years. Thought of black notebook hidden inside mattress with translation of each flower, each petal, each color. Thought of everything I had gathered, all proofs, stitched, stitch by stitch, and took coldest, most calculated, most necessary decision of my life. Either I end this now, or we die here, me and Caleb, because this man won't stop ever, and I can't take any more. After 30 years of endurance, seeing her son humiliated on the floor was the final straw that snapped Martha's patience. The time for stitching flowers was over. The time for a permanent, lethal solution had finally arrived. Do you call this murder? Me? I call it housekeeping. When a diseased rat runs into your kitchen, you don't negotiate with it. You don't ask it to leave. You exterminate it. Wayne had been gnawing on my bones for 30 years. And that night I finally set the trap. Can't take one more day, one more beating, one more humiliation. Next day, the 15th of March, 2006, Wednesday, at 2:30 p.m., left house with excuse was going to buy medicine for Caleb. Left him with Mrs. Dorothy, who had come to help lift him from floor, and had lent old chair her husband used, and went straight to Main Street Pharmacy, on corner, entered, searched shelves, and found what was looking for. Rat poison, green envelope of 1 ounce, poison to kill rats everyone used because had rat infestation in Muncie at that time. Pharmacist who attended me was Nancy, woman of about 40 years, thin, with glasses, who noted sale in control book because poison was controlled product, had to register who bought, paid $3.20, kept envelope in purse, returned home, and hid inside. Flour tin kept in kitchen cupboard, in back, where he never looked. Spent whole day of March 14 calculating, thinking, planning every detail with same precision used to embroider, same meticulousness used to count stitches. He weighed 180 pounds, was 6'2" tall, and I knew lethal dose of rat poison for man of that weight was between 0.2 and 0.35 ounces, so decided to use 0.3 ounces. 0.3 ounces that would dissolve in 24 ounces of bourbon. Brand he drank every single day. Brown bottle kept on top of fridge, always with remainder. He kept refilling, drinking, refilling. Waited him leave, waited him go to bar, as did every night. And at 11:47 p.m., with kitchen empty, with Caleb sleeping in room, because had given sedative for him to rest after trauma of previous day. Took green envelope hidden in flour tin, opened carefully, poured white powder inside bourbon bottle that was half full, took wooden spoon used to stir, stew and stirred. Stirred slowly, 43 times. Counted every spoon movement, turning inside clear liquid, until powder disappeared completely. Until no more visible grain, no sign something was different there. Put bottle back in place, on fridge, cleaned spoon, kept empty envelope in bottom of trash, under potato peel and food scrap. Washed hands 3 times with soap, dried, and went to lie down. Knowing when he arrived, drunk as always arrived, would go straight to that bottle as always went, and was exactly what happened. 1:15 a.m. of March 15, heard key in door, heard him stumble in entrance, hit frame, and heard unmistakable noise of him taking bottle, opening, pouring whiskey in glass kept on sink. Heard him drink, first glass, pour second, drink, pour third, drink, approximately 14 ounces total, more than half bottle, dose more than sufficient to make poison act. 1:50 a.m., 35 minutes after he started drinking, heard first sign, vomit noise. Him vomiting in kitchen sink, vomiting with force, that violent retching sound. Then started seizure. Heard him fall on floor, hit head on cupboard, body thrashing, and waited. Waited until 2:30. Waited until sure he was really bad, wasn't just passing sickness. And then called 911, spoke with trembling voice, faking despair. My husband is sick. Think drank too much. Having seizure. Come fast. For love of God. Recording of this call exists to this day. Stayed kept as proof, and in it I sound like worried wife, terrified, trying to save husband. Ambulance arrived 15 minutes later. Paramedics entered, saw him on floor, convulsing, foam coming out mouth, eyes rolled back, and started emergency procedures. Put him on stretcher, took to hospital running, and I went along, sitting in back of ambulance, holding his hand that was cold, looking at his face that was purple and feeling peace, relief, sensation that finally that was going to end. 3:10 a.m., halfway to Methodist Hospital. His heart stopped. Paramedic tried to revive, did CPR, used defibrillator, but didn't help. He died right there inside ambulance, and when arrived at hospital, doctor on duty could only confirm death and fill certificate. Wayne, 59 years, death by cardiorespiratory arrest. But ER doctor had suspected, had seen symptoms and recognized. That wasn't alcohol overdose, was poisoning, very violent vomit, very strong seizure, classic pattern of rat poison intoxication. Notified police, still in hospital. And at 4:20 a.m., 2 officers arrived at my house with search warrant. Entered kitchen. Found whiskey bottle, still with remainder in bottom. Collected for forensics. Collected glass he had used. Collected whole kitchen trash. Sheriff Miller, man of about 50, tall, serious, took me to station and interrogated me for 3 hours straight, from 5 a.m. until 8, asking same questions different ways. Did you put something in his drink? Did you want him dead? Did you have motive to want him dead? And I confessed. Confessed everything, right in first hour. Didn't lie. Didn't invent excuse. Didn't try to hide anything. Said. Did put yes. Put 0.3 ounces of rat poison, sure shot in his whiskey. Bought yesterday at Main Street Pharmacy. Nancy, who sold, must have noted in her book. Sheriff stopped writing, looked at me with surprised face, because criminal who confesses right away is rare, and asked, why? And I answered, because he beat me for 30 years. Because threw my son from a deck and left him paraplegic. Because broke boy's wheelchair yesterday and dragged him by hair. Because tore out my tooth with slap. Because I couldn't take any more. Because was either him or me. And Sheriff said, do you have proof of all this talking? And I answered, have 347 embroidered proofs. Have notebook with translation. Have medical history of my son. Have everything documented. Ordered fetch embroideries at my house. Brought cardboard box with 347 towels. Brought black notebook and spread everything on station table. Open towel by towel. Explained code. Rose with 19 petals embroidered in red thread means on January 19th I took slap. Carnation with 5 petals in orange thread means on February 5th I took punch. Sunflower with 12 petals in yellow thread means on March 12th I took kick. Sheriff stood there looking at that impressed. Called other officers to see and heard him speak softly to clerk. Never seen anything like it. This woman documented 30 years of aggression embroidering flowers. But even impressed, even seeing all that proof, arrested me in act for qualified homicide. Took me to Indiana Women's Prison that same afternoon of March 15. And I stayed there held preventively, waiting trial for 7 months, from March to October 2006. Cell was tiny, 8 feet long by 6 feet wide, space I shared with other 3 women. Linda, who had killed husband with knife, Susan, who had killed boyfriend with gun, and Karen, who had killed partner with poison too, like me. Caleb stayed home being cared for by Mrs. Dorothy, who offered to watch him until I got out. And I paid $300 a month to her from money saved from embroidery sales, money that would run out in some months, but was what had. Inside cell, I started embroidering compulsively, asked for old pillowcase from prison administration, asked for thread, asked for needle, and spent whole day embroidering anything, flowers, birds, stars, just to keep head busy, not to go crazy in there. Other inmates kept looking, asked, why do you embroider so much? And I explained, It's what I know to do. It's what calms me. It's what keeps me alive. On the 8th of April 2006, almost month after being arrested, received first visit from my lawyer, Jessica, public defender of 34 years, graduated from Indiana University, 6 years career, who took my case by automatic distribution because I had no money to hire private lawyer. She entered visit room, sat in front of me, opened her briefcase and said, "Mrs. Martha, read your file, read police inquiry, read your confession, and brought embroideries police seized because want to understand this system you created." Took towels she had brought in large bag, spread on table and started explaining towel by towel, flower by flower, petal by petal, color, showing how each detail meant something, how 13 years of suffering were there, stitched, documented, proved. Jessica was shocked, saw in her eyes, in way picked up each towel carefully, how examined closely, how noted everything in her notebook with tiny handwriting, said to me with moved voice, "Mrs. Martha, worked 6 years in public defenders, already seen hundreds of domestic violence cases, but never in life seen proof so meticulous, so complete, so intelligent as this. You created system no abuser would suspect, no judge will be able to ignore, will change way judges see domestic violence." Spent next 3 days cataloging all 347 embroideries, photographed each one, created dossier of 89 pages with photo, description, code translation, technical analysis, aggression, chronology, everything organized, printed, bound. Her defense strategy was putative self-defense added with mitigating factors. 30 years of documented violence proving state of necessity, son's paraplegia caused by husband proving he was dangerous, momentary mental disturbance caused by prolonged suffering. She argued I killed not for revenge, but survival, that saw no other way out, that state failed me when didn't arrest him for throwing Caleb from deck, that I was forced to do justice with own hands because official justice didn't work. Trial happened in October 2006 at Muncie Courthouse. Jury with 7 jurors, 5 women and 2 men. Prosecution asking 20 years for qualified homicide with base motive. Defense asking acquittal or minimum sentence of 6 years. Took 50 embroideries to show jurors. Chose most significant. Rose with 23 petals in red thread of day, he broke my rib. Carnation with 15 petals in orange thread of day, he drowned me in tank. Lily with 12 petals in yellow thread of day, he burned my arm with iron, explained code with firm voice. Didn't cry, didn't make drama, just showed deformed hands from embroidering so much and said, "These hands stitched proof for 13 years, because new poor woman's word is worth nothing, that judge doesn't believe woman without physical proof. So, created my own way to document hell lived." Caleb went later too. Took him in wheelchair to court, put him in front of jury, and when asked how became paraplegic, told truth for first time in life. Told father had thrown him from deck at 8 years old, that he lied in hospital because was afraid, that had lived 22 years being humiliated by man who should protect him. Silence in court while he spoke was absolute. Nobody breathed. 3 jurors cried. Jury convicted me, considered guilty of qualified homicide, because technically premeditated, planned, executed coldly, wasn't self-defense in strict sense of law. Sentence was 20 years reclusion in closed regime. But Judge Carmen applied all possible mitigating factors. Spontaneous confession, proven domestic violence, state of emotional disturbance, and reduced sentence to 14 years, with possibility of regime progression after serving 40%, which would give 5 years and 7 months. Prison was supposed to be her punishment, but Martha turned it into her greatest classroom. Her story proves that even the quietest voices can shake the foundations of justice. So keep listening to see how her secret code is still saving lives today. Heard sentence with head held high, without crying, without collapsing, because knew that would happen, that would pay for what did, and was at peace with that. Was at peace because finally, Wayne wouldn't hurt anyone else. Inside prison, started teaching embroidery to other inmates. Without planning, without wanting, started naturally, because women saw me embroidering and asked to learn. Between 2006 and 2008, taught 18 women who were imprisoned for same reason as me, had killed violent husbands, abusive partners, boyfriends who beat, taught flower code to them. explained how worked and spoke. When you get out here, if meet any woman getting beaten, but afraid to report, teach her to embroider proofs, teach her to document without abuser suspecting, because this system can save her life, just like saved mine from being forgotten, from becoming just one more woman killed by violent husband nobody punishes. In 2009, one of inmates I had taught, Charlene, finished her sentence and left free. She had stayed 4 years imprisoned for killing partner, who had broken her arm 3 times, and when left, took embroidery technique outside, taught 6 friends of hers who were beaten by husbands, but had no courage to report, had no proof, had no way to prove. These 6 women started embroidering towels, pillowcases, dish towels with code I had created. And one of them, Julia, 29 years, used 23 embroidered pillowcases as proof when finally had courage to go to police station in 2010. Took pillowcases in bag, showed to Officer Andrea, who was sensitive woman, attentive, and explained code. Each flower is beating. Each petal is day. Each color is month. Officer accepted that as documentary proof, attached to police report, photographed everything, and used as basis to ask preventive arrest of Julia's husband. He was arrested, convicted to 3 years for habitual bodily injury, and was first time in history embroidery was accepted officially as proof of domestic violence in criminal process. Now answer me with all sincerity and want you to comment down there without fear of saying what really think. Do you think I did wrong killing Wayne? Think I should have waited how many more years? More 10 years getting beaten? More 20 years seeing my son humiliated? More 30 years until he killed me for good? Or throw Caleb from another deck and this time kill him? You sitting there comfortable in your house, judging my decision, tell me what you would have done in my place. Don't answer me with the morality of someone sipping coffee in a warm house. Answer me as someone tasting blood in their mouth and hearing their child's bones snap. Would you keep embroidering flowers, or would you pick up that wooden spoon and start stirring? Comment below. I'm reading every single word. Would have continued embroidering flowers forever while getting beaten every week, while seeing your son dragged by hair, while losing teeth from so much slap in face? Or would have done like I did? Would have put those 0.3 ounces of rat poison in whiskey and ended 30 years of hell at once? Comment there with honesty, without hypocrisy, without pretending you represent saint that never thought of doing justice with own hands. Tell me what you would have done truly, because I guarantee one thing. When it's you with broken rib throbbing with pain, when it's your son thrown from deck of 14 feet and stayed without walking forever, when it's you with nowhere to run, because police didn't solve, because judge didn't punish, because state abandoned you, answer changes completely, moral changes completely, and you understand sometimes killing isn't crime, is survival. Spent 12 years of life in Indiana Women's Prison, from March 2006 to April 2018. 12 years of sentence of 14 reduced for good behavior and remission for work. 12 years sleeping in cell, 8 feet long by 6 feet wide. Tiny space shared with other 3 women, changing as some left and others entered. But always 3, always tight, always breathing same stale air of that concrete cubicle that was our whole world. Routine was rigid, millimetrically controlled. Wake up 5:30 a.m. with scream of guard banging on iron bar. Coffee at 6. Cup of watery coffee with stale bread. Work from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. 8 hours straight in prison sewing workshop. Sunbath from 4 to 5 p.m. 1 hour walking in yard surrounded by high wall, and then back to cell until next day. Repeating everything same every day, every month, every year. Was hired as embroidery instructor of sewing workshop in May 2006, 2 months after entering prison, because director had seen embroideries I did in cell, had heard of my case, and thought I could teach other inmates profession they could use when got out. Salary was $340 a month, meager, less than minimum wage. But inside jail that was fortune. Gave to buy hygiene products, some food in canteen, send change to Caleb outside. Taught 1,247 inmates over 12 years. Exact number recorded in workshop control book. Women of all ages, all crimes, from one 8-year-old girl who killed boyfriend to 60-year-old lady who poisoned husband like me. Produced 4,380 embroidered pieces sold in prison shop. Towels, pillowcases, dish towels, napkins, All made with same care I did outside. Same quality standard, same care with every stitch. Won Best Instructor Award 4 times in 2008, 2011, 2014, and 2017. Award that was just printed paper, but filled me with pride because meant my work was recognized, that even imprisoned I served for something. In 2008, 2 years after entering prison, formalized what started calling Martha Code. Evidence embroidery system created outside and now teaching inmates organized, structured, documented way. Wrote manual of 23 pages by hand in tiny, neat handwriting, explaining every detail. How to choose flower type for each aggression type. How to count petals to mark right day. How to use thread colors to identify month. How to embroider in way looks just beautiful decoration, but actually is complete code of domestic violence. Made 89 copies of this manual over 10 years. Copied by hand each page, took weeks to finish complete copy, and distributed to each inmate close to release. Made them promise would teach at least 2 women outside. Would spread knowledge. Would transform embroidery into liberation weapon. Between 2009 and 2018, while still imprisoned, received news of 34 cases of women who used embroideries as proof in judicial processes. Women living in violent situation, who had no courage or way to report traditional way, who learned code with someone I taught and embroidered for months, gathered 20, 30, 40 pieces, and took everything to station, to defender, to lawyer as physical proof of years of suffering. 34. 28. Achieved protective measures accepted. Removal of abuser, prohibition of approach, and 19 achieved criminal conviction of abusers. Men arrested, punished, paid for what did. There were 6 women who, like me, killed violent partners and were acquitted in juries because presented embroideries as proof of self-defense. Showed years of documented aggression, showed had no other way out and jurors understood, acquitted, freed. My regime progression came in January 2011, after serving 5 years and 8 months in closed regime, giving 40% necessary sentence to progress. Passed to semi-open regime, meaning could leave to work during day, but had to sleep in prison at night, and got job in sewing workshop in Indianapolis. Earned $720 a month sewing clothes, and continued giving embroidery class in prison, in spare hours. In 2014, 3 years later, achieved open regime allowing work outside and only appear in court once a month to sign paper. Didn't need to sleep in jail anymore. Managed to rent small room near workshop and, for first time in 8 years, slept alone in silence, without noise of closing gate, without groan of woman having nightmare, without smell of sewage and mold. It sounds crazy, I know, but that 6 by 8 foot cell was the biggest room I ever lived in. You know why? Because the door locked from the outside. For 12 years, I knew exactly where the monster was he was 6 feet under. And that, my friends, is the sweetest sleep you will ever know. In April 2018, 12 years after entering that hell, left on definitive parole. Sentence served, debt paid, free woman again. Condition of parole was not leaving Muncie for 2 years. Couldn't travel, couldn't move city. Had to appear in court every month to prove residence and work, but was free. Finally free, after 12 years breathing jail air. First thing did was fetch Caleb, my son, who stayed those 12 years living with Mrs. Dorothy, saint neighbor who cared for him without charging anything, besides those $300 a month sent in first years and later couldn't even send that because money ran out. Caleb 33 years when reunited. Still in wheelchair, never walk again, but learned to fix watches alone, bought tools with borrowed money, set up small table in Mrs. Dorothy's house, where served neighborhood clients, changed battery, adjusted strap, fixed broken mechanism, and made from $800 to $1,100 a month, depending on amount of service. Rented small 3-room house right there in Muncie, in Southside neighborhood, where born. Street near house where grew up. Place knew every corner, every neighbor, every tree. Rent was $650 a month. Fit exactly budget we had. My social security of $820 achieved by contribution time. Plus, Caleb's $800 to $1,000. $100 gave $2,000. $720 total, sufficient to pay rent, lights, water, food, medicine, simple life, more dignified, no luxury, but no passing need. Furnished house slowly, bought used furniture, second-hand stove, fridge owner of store sold cheap because had dent in door, and went to live together again, me and my son, 12 years after separated by that prison. In September 2018, 5 months after leaving jail, received call from producer of 60 Minutes program on CBS, saying, heard of my story, wanted to make special report about Martha Code, about domestic violence, about women creating alternative ways to protect selves. Accepted immediately. Thought opportunity to spread method, make more people know, help more women. Came here home, filmed for 3 days. Interviewed me, Caleb, Mrs. Dorothy, Jessica, my lawyer, and interviewed 5 women who used embroidery as proof and managed to get rid of abusers. Story aired the 22nd of September 2018. 18 minutes. Complete report showing embroideries close up. Me explaining code flower by flower. Women crying, thanking because method saved lives. Repercussion enormous. Video had 8.4 million views on internet. Comments by thousands. People sharing. People saying going to teach friends, sisters, cousins living in violent situation. 2 weeks after 60 Minutes report, received invitation from Indiana University to give lecture on creative documentation of domestic violence. Lecture happened November 2018. Auditorium packed with 340 law and social work students, young people, people going to work with victims of violence in future, people needing to understand proof of domestic violence need not be just police report and medical report. Can be embroidery, can be drawing, can be any creative record woman manages to make without abuser suspecting. Spoke for 1 hour and a half, showed original embroideries, explained technique, answered questions, and at end received standing ovation, hugs, thanks. Offered fee of $200, but didn't accept. Asked to donate money to shelter for women victims of violence operating here in Indianapolis. Because for me, wasn't about money, was about spreading knowledge, saving lives. In March 2019, happened something changed everything. Public Defender of Indiana formalized Martha Code, created formal protocol called Martha Protocol of Unconventional Documentation of Domestic Violence, official guidance, saying public defenders must accept embroideries, drawings, coded diaries, any type creative record as documentary proof in domestic violence processes. Providing victim can explain code, providing temporal coherence, providing possible verification authenticity. Did training with 78 public defenders spread across 6 states in Midwest: Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, Kentucky, Missouri, and called me to participate in training, to explain personally how works, how verify if true, how use in hearing, how present to judge. Was first time in U.S. history unconventional method of violence documentation became official justice system protocol. And name gave was mine, Martha Protocol, my name associated forever with this form protecting women. Between 2019 and 2024, in last 5 years, 412 women used evidence embroidery officially in judicial processes across Midwest. Women learned code with seamstresses of Network I Coordinate, who embroidered for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, gathering proofs non-stop, documenting every aggression in colorful flowers sold at market, gave as gift to relative, kept hidden waiting right moment to use. Of these 412, 267 achieved protective measures, removal of abuser, prohibition of approach. Some achieved even preventive arrest of violent partner. 89 achieved definitive criminal conviction. Men tried, arrested, serving time for bodily injury, threat, false imprisonment, psychological torture, and 34 women acquitted in homicide processes. Women who killed abusers and used embroideries to prove self-defense show years of suffering, convinced jury had no choice, just like I didn't. On the 8th of March 2021, International Women's Day, received Congressional Award. Award given every year to American women made significant contribution women's rights, gender equality, defense victims, violence. Ceremony was in Washington, D.C., at Capitol, huge hall, full important people, senators, representatives, secretaries, judges, me there in middle, All out of place, poor seamstress from Muncie, crooked hands from embroidering so much, simple dress bought at market, but chest full of pride. Made speech of 7 minutes, wrote everything by hand before, memorized not to stutter and spoke firm voice, looking at audience. Past 30 years getting beaten silent, 13 years embroidering proofs hidden, 12 years imprisoned paying for crime freeing self. But today stand here, proving poor woman without education can create method changes, law, saves life, becomes national protocol. Finished with phrase became my trademark. Everyone repeats now. Stitch made is proof kept, and proof kept is life saved. Audience rose, applauded standing 3 minutes, women crying, people shouting my name and me there standing holding a award plaque, thinking, Mom, Dad, you seeing this? Your daughter, born in shack, learned to embroider to help pay food, receiving congressional award? From a prison cell to the steps of the Capitol, this moment proves that Martha's twisted fingers didn't just hold a needle, they held the power to rewrite the law. She turned her personal hell into a lifeline for thousands, showing us that even the quietest voice, when armed with the truth, can bring an entire system to its feet. Jessica, my lawyer, defended me there in 2006 and believed in my embroideries when nobody believed. Continued working at Public Defender of Indiana. Promoted Coordinator 2015 and 2018, created Nucleus Specialized Domestic Violence Inside Institution. Nucleus attends only women victims violence, has defenders trained to deal trauma, knows Martha Code, and accepts embroidery as proof without questioning. She visits me twice a year, comes here home, drinks coffee, talks with Caleb, brings gift, and always says same thing. Martha, your case changed my life, changed way work, changed way see justice, became real friends. Friendship born in prison room lasts today, almost 20 years later. Mrs. Dorothy, Saint Neighbor, cared for Caleb 12 years while imprisoned, charged nothing besides those $300 month first years, treated son as hers, 81 years today, lives house next mine, and I pay $400 month to her today. Not as payment for what did, because priceless, but gratitude, way repay at least little what did for me. Caleb fixes watches for her free. Any watch brings, any problem has, he fixes, not accept money, says obligation repay affection, became real family. Family not blood, but choice, care, love built shared suffering. Charlene, first inmate spread method outside when left prison 2009, works today hairdresser Indianapolis, has owned small salon, neat, in Liberty neighborhood, and over these 15 years taught evidence embroidery to 19 clients beaten by husbands. Clients sat in salon chair do hair ended venting, telling beating took, black eye hiding makeup, broken arm said fell. Charlene taught code, gave thread, gave fabric, said, embroider while he out, sell at market, keep money hidden, and when have 20 pieces look for me, I take to defender friend mine. Of 19, 6 managed separate abusers using embroideries proof, managed house shelter, managed restart life far violence. Charlene visits every year, April 7th, my birthday, brings cake, brings gift, spends whole afternoon here home, remembering jail time, thanking having taught embroider, saying saved not only her, but clients too. Of 1,247 inmates taught over 12 years prison, 89, keep contact me today through Facebook group, created 2019. Group called Martha's Flowers, share photo embroideries make, ask questions, technique, tell. Story women, helped using code. 34 women work today, professional seamstresses, earning life needle thread, and 12 opened-owned studios, small backyard, adapted garage, but business theirs, sustenance theirs, dignity theirs. All really share evidence. Embroidery technique other women, teach neighbors, friends, relatives, clients. Spreading knowledge network grows every day, reaches places can't imagine. Today, 2025, 73 years completed April. Live with Caleb 41 years this rented 3-room house Muncie. Living Social Security $820 month, added $800 to $1,100 he makes fixing watches. Total, $2,720. Enough live dignity, pay bills, Buy food, buy medicine, spare little emergency. Coordinate network 78 seamstresses, spread 6 states Midwest. Women taught personally, or learned others taught. Women dominate Martha Code teach free any woman looks, any woman beaten needs safe way document. Has group with 412 participants, women all ages, all cities. Some already used embroidery freed, others still embroidering, gathering proofs slowly, waiting right moment. Since 2019, group already attended 1,830 women, taught code, taught technique, gave emotional support, gave courage report. Work partnership, 23 lawyers spread 6 states. Lawyers know Martha Protocol, trained public defender, or learned alone, accept embroidery proof processes, protective measure, divorce, child custody, any situation necessary prove domestic violence. Protocol created together, simple. Woman embroiders, 6 months to year, depending frequency aggressions, gathers minimum 20 pieces embroidered, each documenting least one aggression, takes all lawyer photographs, catalogs, attaches process documentary proof. Success rate 71%, means every 10 processes use embroidery proof. 7 accepted judges, 7 result protective measure conviction abuser, 7 women manage free. Attend 8 to 12 cases month, women look me wanting, learn code. Women saw, report, heard friend, found contact internet call desperate asking help, teach everything video call because no condition go personally each city, each state. So, set time, call, show camera, how embroider each flower type, how count petals, how choose right color, how make look just beautiful decoration, charge nothing, all free, all love, all because know if charge many won't have money pay, continue getting beaten silent. Only condition make when free, when use embroideries manage leave situation, promise teach least other 2 women, promise spread knowledge, promise chain won't stop, and all promise, all fulfill. And network grows, grows, grows non-stop. I am Martha, 73 years just turned. Born Muncie, Indiana, the 7th of April, 1952. Daughter Walter, carpenter. Betty, washerwoman seamstress. Simple people, poor, hard-working, taught since tiny stitch made stitch counted, number proof, thing not noted not exist. Poor woman only one defense life. Memory proof kept. This is complete story my life. How seamstress crooked hands, sticking needle fabric 38 years, working factory, making shirt cuff, beaten husband drunk trucker 30 years straight, saw son turn paraplegic 8 years old, because father threw him deck 14 feet high straight concrete floor, created embroidery system where each colorful flower documented beating, each petal counted day marked forever, each thread color month registered, each flower type aggression type cataloged. How embroidered 347 tablecloths over 13 years, 1993 to 2006, keeping proof nobody imagined existed. Selling proofs market $40 each. Until day put 0.3 ounces rat poison sure shot bourbon whiskey his ended 30 years hell once only. Got 20 years prison qualified homicide. Sentence reduced 14 years judge. Served 12 years Indiana Women's Prison 2006 to 2018. And these 12 years jail taught 1,247 inmates embroider. Created what today calls Martha Code. System used 78 seamstresses, 6 states, Midwest, already freed 412 women, violent men. Became official protocol, public defender Indiana, accepted judges legitimate documentary proof domestic violence processes. 1 congressional award, was report. 60 minutes became university lecture, saved hundreds lives, continue saving, while have strength teach. Lost 30 years life beaten silent. Lost 12 years imprisoned paying crime freeing self. But didn't lose always defined, since mom taught. Capacity count, stitch stitch, embroider proof each flower, transform pain drawing, use needle thread justice when station not resolve, when judge not believe, when state abandons, when man thinks can beat forever no consequence. Proved seamstress 73 years crooked hands, curved fingers, not straighten anymore. Son wheelchair living together, still manages, create method, saves hundreds lives, changes, law, becomes national protocol, transforms. Way justice system sees domestic violence proof. Proved stitch made proof, kept proof, kept life saved. Poor woman without education, revolutionize way combat violence against woman this country. And if want hear more stories, warrior women transformed suffering system. Took worst tragedy, life transformed, tool free others. Proved age, not diminish, capacity change world. One against everything, everyone, using only intelligence, patience, courage. Then subscribe now, channel Grandmas of America. Because while have these crooked hands managing thread needle dark, while have these 73 years experience sewing proof, while have memory teach Martha code more women, continue proving every single day, domestic violence beaten, abuser punished, woman free self using only needle, thread, fabric intelligence. This my story, this me, Martha, seamstress embroidered own freedom, stitch stitch, flower flower, proof today dedicates everyday remains life, teach other women do same. Click these squares passing your screen now. Choose other story. Hear more reports women survived impossible, brought down, tried, destroy, transformed trauma purpose. Because each story proof American woman, mainly poor woman, old woman, woman everyone underestimates, stronger, smarter, more resilient, anyone imagines. As long as one of us is alive to tell the story, to teach, and to spread this knowledge, no abuser will remain unpunished forever. No violence will go without proof. No woman needs to die in silence without trying to defend herself with whatever weapons she has. In my case, those weapons were a needle, thread, fabric, 13 years of patience, and finally, 0.3 ounces of rat poison that put an end to my hell. This is my story. This is me, Martha, the seamstress who embroidered her own freedom, stitch by stitch, flower by flower, proof by proof. Today, I dedicate every remaining day of my life to teaching other women to do the same. Click the squares appearing on your screen now to hear more stories of women who survived the impossible. Because each story is proof that an American woman, especially a poor, older woman whom everyone underestimates, is stronger and smarter than anyone imagines. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for listening.